In order to get the dust effect into this scene, we need to realize that we're working with particles. Unlike the geometry of the ground, where we're actually using one object to deform another, we're actually creating particles from scratch. It is true that we are using the ground and the character to create that dust, but this requires a point cloud for a particle effect. We don't have a point cloud in this scene, so I'll build a point cloud, an empty point cloud. I'll call this my dust point cloud. And I'll need to create a simulated ice tree on it. So I'll just clear off this ice tree here, the one from the ground, and create a simulated ice tree. So again, we see the traditional ice operator in the simulation portion of the construction stack. And since we already have our compound built, I'll switch to my particle tasks and navigate down to my ice folder, or sorry, to my tools, ice, and bring in my dust effect compound. I'll execute that compound into port 1 of the ice tree and pass it the requisite emitter and splash geometry objects. The first object, of course, being the ground. Just bring that into the graph. And I'll actually use this one as the emitter object, and the splash object, of course, is the Mulcore body geometry. Use the geometry from that. The next problem that we have to solve is determining where the particles will be deleted. If you remember in the compound, we had particles culled out that fell below a certain value in y. Just a very quick way of deleting particles and preventing them from being calculated as they fall through our ground plane. Well, if I hit play, we don't really see any particles being emitted at all, and of course this is due to the delete particles attribute we've created on our compound. If I double click on the compound, we're set to delete any particle that's below a y value of 0.72 units. Well, if we look at our grid is at 0.702 units. That's definitely below a value of 0.72. So we can actually just lower this value to say something like 0.4 or 0.5. Maybe even lower it some more. And you can see at a low enough value, we start getting a little bit of dust being kicked up from the character's feet. Okay, let me just get a better value here. Let me see what's going on with particles below. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. Let me see if I can raise these particles up a little bit more, maybe call them out a little bit earlier. Yeah, for a day like this, this should actually work out pretty well. Again, I don't want too much dust kicking up from this scene. It's supposed to be very subtle. You don't see plumes of sand kicking up behind characters as they walk. It's a very subtle effect. So I'll start with this and see what I end up with.